Looking good, looking good. Looks like an African king. Oh, Lordy, Lord. You're also going to try and get 10 wives, huh? Looking like it. Anyway, let's get on with the show. Lobola, is it just a custom of selling women like slaves, contends Jacob Tladi of Sebokeng? True or false? That is our discussion tonight. Lobola. Good evening. On our panel, we have Bikicha, who says Lobola must go. Lobola is here to stay. Mangezi, who says Lobola is here to stay. Okay. And Professor Charles Lamini, who says that Lobola needs to change with the times if it wants to survive. We tried to get some ladies, but they did not want to come on and contest this one. Maybe they'll contest from the floor. Is it about national pride or money? We will be looking at 3 areas. 1, a case for or against Lobola. 2, the issue of Lobola and the exploitation of women. And finally, solutions in our changing times. Mr. Bikicha, where do you stand on this issue?
My point of view, Felicia, is that it's about time Lobola was abolished. Because a lot of people have suffered because of Lobola. Mm-hmm. A lot of women have been abused because of Lobola. Because eventually the man feels that he's bought you, you are his property. If you feel like leaving him, it's either you belong to him or nobody else will have you. A lot of women have been killed because of that. A lot of women have become subservient, have lost their pride. In fact, to the parents, it has become a money-making scheme.
Richard Stemmer here, who happens to be black, agrees with you, says, I don't want to pay Lobola, but I will if I have to. But then the woman must expect to taste the soles of my shoes every weekend, and I will have the right to beat her up. I paid money for her, didn't I? Don, this was in your magazine, Stand Up. Ooh, Don, I don't have a son, honey, but anyway, let's talk.
Actually, when I went out into Johannesburg interviewing people, most of the guys that I interviewed, they were all saying, no. We don't want to pay Lobola because it exploits women and things like that. And when I spoke to the women, they said that they want Lobola to be paid for them. But the guys were saying, we don't want to pay Lobola, but if we do pay for Lobola, then those women must expect to be kicked, to be harassed, because they have bought the women and they must do whatever they say.
You, as a young woman, traveled the world. Would you want Lobola paid for you?
Well, Felicia, I was speaking to my mother about it the other day, and I know we're all mummy's girls, but I spoke to my mother and I said to her, if I want Lobola to be paid for me, then I want to pay Lobola for my boyfriend as well.
So you can kick each other around now.
So we can kick each other around, because I think it's 50-50. Love is 50-50. Marriage is 50-50. You have to pay for them and they have to pay for you.
Well, Mr. Mangezi seems to be moving in his chair already. Why?
Not actually. I'm waiting patiently. Not in a hurry.
Where do you stand on this issue?
I think, Felicia, Lobola should stay. Lobola must be paid on. Lobola is our custom as blacks. Lobola has been paid over the years. Lobola is a black woman's pride.
Go ahead. Looks like you're still hot.
A woman who hasn't been paid Lobola has no status in as far as a black person is concerned. Look. Yes.
Well, I'm in trouble, it looks like, because none was paid for me.
It should be paid tomorrow, don't you worry.
But there was a barter system here. I mean, get it straight. The idea was Okay, I'll pay for your 2 semesters at school to help you really give you a head start. I consider that Lobola coming directly to me, and I'm what I am today because of that, that start that I got.
You were given a start that you had. That does not.
But the Lobola didn't go to the Mabuzas. They have enough money to take care of themselves.
Felicia, Lobola must go to your family. Don't miss up issues. Lobola doesn't go to you. It goes to your parents.
Why?
Your parents, in turn, will then take you to the family that has paid you Lobola. And there will be now a relationship between your family and that family because of Lobola that hasn't gone to you.
Well, Lizzie from Drum says no. We just heard Don there from True Love. It looks like the magazines are here.
Well,
You also wrote on the subject.
Well, I did. It was quite a difficult subject, I must say. People were not prepared to talk about it. People wouldn't let on. But I believe we can still build a relationship here. We can still build it. Like Don said, you know, we go 50-50. But not forgetting or divorcing ourselves from the culture itself. Why don't we get the 2 families together, sit down, reach amicable agreements here? If the guy is prepared to pay something, fine, let it be his wish or his family's wish. But let's go 50-50. Let's do everything together.
Professor Dlamini, I'm saying changing times here.
Yeah, I would like to say that I'm not in favor of saying that you should abolish Lobola for simplistic reasons. It is very easy to say that women have been exploited because of Lobola, but you find that in a number of societies where there is no Lobola, women are also exploited. So that therefore, I believe that if people are arguing either for the abolition of Lobola, must do it for the right reasons. Now, you'll find women, for instance, as I've said, who have been beaten, but who have not been Lobolaed for. Now, there is nothing in Lobola which says that you're entitled to beat or to abuse your woman. Lobola doesn't entitle you to do that. In fact, some people would argue that the purpose of Lobola is to ensure that you treat your wife well. Because if you don't treat her well, then she can leave you, and if she leaves you, then you'll forfeit Lobola. But of course, if she doesn't behave well herself, then of course you can divorce her, and if you divorce her, the parents will not be entitled to a return of Lobola. Which therefore means that some people think that Lobola actually provides a form of guarantee. In some cases that may be simplistic. So I'm saying that personally, I'm not saying that Lobola should be abolished simplistically if people still want it. But I agree with this statement that Lobola should not be seen as a means of exploiting the bridegroom, or should be seen as enslaving a woman. But it should be seen sort of as an agreement, sort of a cultural practice between the people, because this thing goes with the psychological sort of a dimension. It is part of the culture of the people, and many people cannot regard a relationship as a marriage unless Lobola has been paid. But it must be an agreement between the two people, two families. And it is very important also in terms of cultural practice, that for instance, in terms of Zulu culture, you are not simply supposed to demand, an exorbitant amount of money or perhaps too many cattle. The Lobola was based on what the bridegroom could be able to afford. And therefore, I believe that if 2 families come together, they must actually agree not to exploit, but just to establish this relationship. Because people still believe that Lobola has a role to play, rightly or wrongly. Because some people would argue and say, well, if a woman has not been Lobolaed, now the man is not going to treat her. He will say to her, we have not been paid for, I don't value you, rightly or wrongly.
And you just touched on it there, the changing of the tradition. There was the cow issue before, where the cattle had to be brought. Now we've changed to money. I'm now worried that from money it's going to become the realistic changes of the country to its abolition, right or wrong?
Now, let me say first of all, that Lobola, as far as as the law is concerned, that is especially if you are marrying by a common law marriage, it is civil rights, it is not part of the marriage. It is a separate agreement. So that therefore, if people want to marry and don't want to pay Lobola, they are free to do that. There is nothing compulsory in terms of the law.
Then, but
It
you're
is
going to find the Mr. Mangezes who don't agree and don't look up to that marriage.
No, the reason why people don't pay lobola is because it forms part of their culture, whatever the law says. And this is very important that people should know that the law actually does not solve all problems. Now, you can have the law, but people can have a different practice from the law. If you want to do that, then of course you are free to abolish the practice. But the important thing is that people are free to enter into an agreement of lobola if they want to. If they don't want to, it is not something that's compulsory. It is not part of a civil marriage.
Okay. Also from the article in True Love, Paula Graham says, even whites have their own way of paying lobola, but they are very subtle about it. All cultures do have a lobola system. We invited Peter Manson here. Do whites have a dowry system?
I think, just to start, I think, you know, it's a tradition in South Africa, lobola. It's an African tradition, it's many tribes' tradition, it's everybody's tradition. We have to ask the question, the Lebanese community has its own tradition, the Greek community has its own tradition, the Jewish community has its own tradition of paying lobola. The differentiation between how we interpret it and how the African at this precise moment in South Africa interprets it is no different. A woman should be put on a pedestal, number one. You should thank the parent for bringing up a beautiful woman because she's going to bear the fruit of new life.
We can see that here with your wife.
Once she's bared the fruit of new life, that is the family unit. And one thing we keep on forgetting is no matter how much lobola it is, if the family unit breaks down and we continue to keep on thinking about divorce and you owned by me and I'm owned by you, nobody's owned by anybody. If we're in the new democracy of South Africa, everybody's equal. And therefore, whether you're woman, male or female, lobola is one form of saying to mommy or daddy, thanks for bringing me such a beautiful woman. And on the other hand, from the female point of view, it's thanks for bringing me such a good man. Because at the end of the day, we are all striving for one thing. The family unit must stay together. If we break down that family unit in this country, we have a major problem.
So whatever mechanisms that are used to hold it together.
Immaterial. And the suggestions of two families coming together. In the Lebanese community, the family meets. I get called in by grandpa or daddy, and I'm scrutinized. Now, what are you going to do to this woman? How are you going to treat her? Are you going to buy her a house? Are you going to fend for the children? That's the norm.
But did you pay some form of lobola here?
Of course.
What was the form of lobola?
Well, first of all, a ring.
Yeah.
And I think the ring is the most important part of the
And
lobola.
it had to be very expensive, obviously.
Yes.
Well, it had to symbolize my love. And I think that's another thing we've forgotten. When two young people in the 1990s, in the year 2000, meet each other, surely they should be able to make the decision to go to mommy and daddy and say, we want each other. Because the one thing we're always forgetting is that we keep on changing the rules. There's a vow. We will not leave each other till death. So lobola is one form of saying my appreciation to mommy and daddy. But on the other side, it's also a commitment to each other. And I think that the from True Love,
Dawn.
if Dawn, excuse me, if I'm going to pay for Dawn,
Ooh.
why doesn't Dawn pay for me?
Oh, okay. You said right in front of your wife, huh? I'm going to come back again and continue because we're seeing so many changes here in the culture. But again, I think we're also criticized for why are we looking at the African culture alone? Let me assure you, I'll be looking at many other cultures. So stay with us until we get back. We continue. Our topic tonight is ilobolo. As long as women allow themselves to be sold like slaves, they will not be the equals of men, says Jacob Tladi again. Where is this Jacob Tladi from Sebokeng? True or false? True or false? In fact, I have a few young ladies here who are against lobola. Who's against lobola here? You're for? All right, stand up. You're for?
As far as lobola is concerned, we are for lobola. I, for one, I was lobolat.
Yeah, man.
Right.
You don't feel like a slave, as he says
the
then.
lobola is not a prize buying a woman. It is a wedding gift. Take it from there, a wedding gift.
But this wedding gift seems to be getting more expensive every
Which
day.
is paid by this
the
bride.
wedding gift does.
And then it's comparable to the dowry, which is brought by the bride. I brought present for my in-laws.
Wait. Hold
50-50.
Hold it. He has to pay 10,000. How much was the present you bought, possibly? 5 rand.
50-50.
Oh, okay.
It goes according to the amount that he has paid, as far as Africans are concerned.
Oh, it's like the
And
Vulamlomo.
now, this is our custom, a long-established practice,
Thank you, my girl.
forming our tradition, passed down from generation to generation, and we are not here to strip down our African people of its culture.
Beautiful, my girl. Beautiful.
Mr. Piquet,
You have my support.
you heard it. What do you say? You heard it.
Felicia, you know, we keep on jumping from the past then to the present. Then we sort of tribalize it, then we jump to the legal system. Now, if you look at Lobola, when it started, as some of the people have already said here, it was a thank you to the parents of the bride for bringing up a wonderful woman. Now, there I draw a line. Was the groom not brought up to be a wonderful husband? Now, that's point one. Point number two is that when we talk of customs, if you look at today's world, if you look at today's young people, if you look at custom, according to custom, you would never find a teenager kissing passionately in the street in the past. But today, those cultures and customs have passed. And you find them kissing this, you dare not even say, what are you doing? Because his or her parents are going to tell you to keep your nose off the children's affairs. That's 2. 3 is that I believe that if your parents, as the bride, want to be thanked for bringing up somebody, I also, as a young man, my parents brought me up to be a very responsible. The reason why I say to this young lady that I would like to marry you, I don't want just to keep you, fat and sad. I would like to make a commitment. That shows something that my parents have brought me up to be responsible, to have a commitment. I want to commit myself to you, you commit yourself to me. That is why I want to legalize this thing. But as soon as you go to the parents as young people, that is where the whole marriage goes to pieces. Most marriages were messed up at the negotiating table.
That's true.
That
though.
is where
That's
the
true.
in-laws started hating each other.
But Mangezi, that is true. That is true. Some marriages have not even continued because the boy cannot afford to pay.
Are you saying some, Felicia?
Some, I said.
And what about some that have managed to take off?
Well, I'm concerned about the some because they could have been and did not.
Oh, I see.
Now, the problem is with that type of generalization is that you don't have any statistic as to how many succeed and how many fail. I think it is very wrong to take a decision based on a few isolated cases. The situation must be so general that, in fact, you can make a rule out of it. I don't think you can necessarily make a rule out of that.
But there must be some merit in Lobola. The fact that you have done so much work also studying it as a white woman and who's so fluent in Tswana tradition.
Yes, what is very important to remember that basically traditionally it was to show respect the woman's family receiving this lobola, to say then the bridegroom's family says thank you and we are taking this woman, this beautiful woman into our family, we will secure the future of the children, everything.
Okay.
The problem is with the preset amount
Preset.
that they are setting now, the woman becomes like a piece of cattle that needs to be negotiated and sold. That is where the problem starts. But when it's a sign of respect, and then it's a different story. But now the practicalities in the modern world is we have urbanization. There's not so much control over the family life. Young people leave for university. They are more individualistic. They want to take their own decisions.
Did you have Lobola pay for? Ba go pataletse Lobola wena. Mbala ka Setswana.
Ba mpateletse lobola ka mokgwa o mongwe.
Jwang?
Wa bona mongwe wa ka gana nyala. Ke pele papa wa ka o tlhakafetse pele ga ke tsholwa. So mama wa ka na sokola mo tirong. So monna wa ka baya a go mothusa mo mmerekong a mothusa gore business e kgone go tlhalefa wa bona.
So there was a barter system here. Your husband had to come in and help in the family, huh?
Yeah, o thusitse mama wa ka.
So that was your Lobola.
That that was my kind of lobola, to show respect and to say thank you for the beautiful daughter, or hopefully.
Wouldn't you have preferred the money instead?
No, I'm not so materialistic at all.
Well, I'm just being facetious here. But Mr. Mangezi, I go back again. Shouldn't the tradition change with the changing times? And I'm going to go to the lawyers here. I really want to talk about the exploitation factor. I want to talk about with the changing society. Aren't we seeing a change here?
Felicia, what I would say about Lobola, the law and tradition is that Professor there told us that you have a choice if you enter into a civil marriage of paying Lobola or not. What he didn't say is that if you want to get into an African cultural marriage, and many people are still doing it up to today, Lobola is enough to show that you are married. It is part of a ceremony. So the minute they pay Lobola for you, you are married, your children are legitimate. As opposed to somebody who bears children with a man there and nothing is paid. Her children are illegitimate, her children cannot.
Chaja, you are clapping hands like crazy. Tell us about it. You paid Lobola.
Should I come down?
Yeah, come down because I'm kind of low, you know.
Okay. Yeah, I tend to agree with the lady over there that Lobola is actually very, very important to us as Africans. That's if we're operating from the African tradition. Because as we pointed out earlier on, that there are many traditions. And traditions are nothing else but sets of beliefs that have been brought down from, ancestors right through to posterity. Now, each and every nation has a set of customs that are buried within that tradition. And if we boast or pride ourselves with being Africans, then we have to follow the African tradition. And the African tradition demands that if you're a man and you want to settle with somebody, you have to show, first of all, that as a man, you'll be capable of looking after that woman. You see, it was more of a social thing that, because Lobola is basically a family thing, and families, a number of families form a community. So around that community, to show your manhood and to show your strength, that as a man, you can do this. And then it's a way of swearing, in other words. You're swearing practically. Instead of saying, I really swear that I'm going to look after your daughter. You do it practically. You say, to show that I'm going to look after your daughter. This is it.
Well, as one of your colleagues, Bob Mabena, in this article, is still going to try and figure out whether he's going to be able to pay or not pay, huh? Yeah, you said I need to start wearing African clothes, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. Felicia, in fact, I want to clarify something. Our culture as African is very rich. And Lobola is forming the integral part of our culture. And if there's anyone who feels that our culture should not be practiced, then it leaves a lot to be desired. And I'm saying that our culture is flexible enough. We are able to change according to the situation. But we don't change the principle. So I would appeal to our panelists not to look our culture on a very subjectivist and to try to justify. Our culture was there before. What we are doing is to rectify our culture and try to revive some more, because we suffered a lot during the colonialism.
Okay, I'd like to get some more young people here quickly. Let me get some more young people. I've been hearing this husky voice here for a while.
Thank you very much, Felicia Mabuza. I think we have to differentiate here between customs and culture. To me, culture is the mode of living. And we have to live in a way in which we are able to live and be able to sustain our living. Then, be that as it may, what I'm saying is that if you have to pay Lobola for me, I have to pay Lobola for you. Rather, our parents, what they should do, they should take the money from both families and give it to us to go and support them.
That was roughly what you were bringing up. Mr. Bikicha.
Felicia.
Wait. Listen to this one.
Felicia, thank you very much, and thanks to that young lady. Culture is not money. We don't have cattle anymore. Now, we have reached a stage where we have destroyed the culture. Today we even categorize Lobola price according to academic qualifications. Now, doesn't that tell you something? If a girl has a BA degree, she's more expensive than the girl who works at a fish and chip shop.
I know.
Doesn't that tell you something? I would settle for one thing, that because I was brought up, I was educated, the young lady was brought up, she was educated. If the two of us decide we want to get married and our parents want to give it a blessing, let them go 50-50, I'll cop out. And then we say to them, we give you our blessing. Go and start a new life. Here's a joint account for you to start a new life. That's what I'm thinking about. Because let's face it, if you look at the shacks today and everywhere else, there are people living here without a scratch of paper to say they were married. They just met, decided they love each other, they built them cuckoo, and they are man and wife. And your children, it doesn't mean that because you didn't pay Lobola, the children are illegitimate. How many kids were born out of wedlock? We give them names like Lerato, Tsuhufacho. We don't say you are a curse. So I'm saying that people, if you want to be realistic and not damage two people in love coming together and saying we love each other, we'd like a commitment. Let us, not the parents, mess it up. Let us help them on the way.
I have to stop here and we'll continue when we get back. It's getting hot, especially when young men like this start talking. We continue on the emotive issue of Lobola.
Yeah, Felicia, there are some few things I want to iron out, especially to that gentleman who's sitting over there.
Mr. Bikicha is a parliamentarian. He's in parliament. You better be good.
Yeah, but even if he's in parliament, but then if he missed the basic principles, I doubt why he's in parliament.
Oh.
Okay. No, look, it's a fact. It's a fact. I mean, if he talks like this, as an African man, how does he trust me to marry his daughter? If he has a daughter, if I'm not going to prove how man enough I am,
she's only 9 years old.
Listen, Felicia, by paying Lobola for her kid, I'm not going to marry her kid because it's not African. Look, we are not in America here. We are not in China or wherever. Even there, they practice there. You see, in Africa, it's our rights. No, it's not a question that we have to question to practice our customs. It's our right, it's our tradition that we practice it. Number two, the principles. Well, he has just mentioned some few things that are very, they are hurting. They should be hurting to him.
Give me one.
And for example, things like women being harassed because of Lobola and what have you.
You're not a woman, so you would not know.
Listen, I would not know. I have to know because I see, as I'm standing here, okay, I'm an African son, okay, raised up by a black woman with a black man, okay, who my father paid Lobola for my mother. And I'm not ashamed of it. You get what I'm saying? So, what he's actually saying, he's talking about people being harassed. Let's check why. That's what we should eliminate. Why are people being harassed?
All right.
No, not because of Lobola. And he mentioned other thing. What's the other thing you mentioned? Say?
Well, we'll get back to him.
Yeah.
Are you a student? You should remember.
Look, no. Let me tell you, even in the real engineering world, even in the real world, right? There are formulas that say in the library, and then we use them. Yeah, I'm in engineering school.
Is that so?
But now, do not capitalize on the fact that I'm a student. I have to remember. See, there are good things and quality things that a person has to remember, because whatsoever that you put in, and you let it stay. If it's junk, it's going to destroy you. So I cannot memorize junk.
All right. But this guy is not an engineering student. I think he's a law student. But Mr. Mangezi, why do you say that? I want you to also answer what you've also heard. But what do you say to people who say, why the flashy weddings of Western culture and still demand things like Lobola? Then people should go and live in huts, somebody said.
Lobola is a basic thing, Felicia. Whether there be a glorious marriage or not thereafter, it's irrelevant. What is important here is that Lobola is an important thing. And I only hope We are not sacrificing our customs to promote other people's customs at the expense of our own custom as blacks. That's number one. Number two, we as blacks had never heard of a vice versa type of lobola. A man lobolating a woman and a woman lobolating a girl. We don't have that kind of thing. If we speak of a culture, let's speak of the culture that we know. We don't know of this foreign culture. And if somebody else wants to introduce this foreign culture, we'll see then. But as for now, we'll say go on with lobola.
But there have been many other things that have been stopped in the culture. Dr. Dlamini, Professor Dlamini, could you touch on some things that we as Africans have abundant in our culture, and why does Lobola also not possibly follow that route?
Because we love Lobola.
Well, I think it depends on the practice. Well, as you said, I mean, it depends on what people want to retain for a variety of reasons. Now, I must also point out that Lobola has not actually remained static. It has changed over the years. Like, for instance, we have moved away from cattle to money. Now, it doesn't violate the principle of Lobola as such. Now, thirdly, the point that has been made of a settlement. Now, already in practice today, as I said, any practice, any custom, if it has to remain, has to adapt to changing circumstances. Lobola has, in a number of instances, adapted to contemporary circumstances. Now, the one example that I can mention is that usually a man will give Lobola for his bride, but actually the parents retain very little of that Lobola. The reason being that the practice has developed over the years that the woman, before she comes, she will buy certain things and gifts and so on. And the money also, which has been derived from Lobola in many cases, is used for paying marriage expenses. So that ultimately the parents retain very little. So it only remains a symbol that people, for instance, want to retain, which I regard as expressing the views of African people or of what they regard as characterizing a marriage. In other words, we need this as a form of symbol, or people need it as a form of symbol that characterizes a marriage, which distinguishes from another form of just informal relationship. So Lobola is changing. Now, it may change into something totally different in future. So there is nothing which prevents it from changing as long as the people, for instance, want it to change.
Your views?
Yes, Felicia, I agree with the professor that Lobola is changing, but I'd like to ask that young man over there that if he says that the minister, that he's not part of his culture, what if my parents say, just because I went to a multiracial school, I'm at Wits now, if I finish my degree, will you be willing to pay 30,000 for me? And will you be willing to buy me a house, furnished, and everything else?
You want to put in other cars, my girl.
Is that the type of manhood you're talking about?
Yeah, because I'm asking for $5 million, not rents, for my daughter. And you better have it when you qualify.
My dear sister, as an African sister, I'm ashamed to hear a statement like that from you. But nevertheless, can I finish?
She's a woman of the changing times. Yeah. Your mother agreed and was possibly some women would say subservient.
But now she's bringing in other debate, like, this Model C schools whereby they mix with other, cross, things like that. They try to reinforce by them. But now, listen to me, baby. Listen to me. Okay. Before she speaks, I want to ask you.
The school I went to is not a model. It's always been a model. It's not a model C school. It's because Lobola has child. It's
no dialogue.
Money is being used. It's money. It's no longer cattle. It's money. And if my parents decide it's 30,000, will you be willing to do that? And I want a house. I'm not going to be living in a shack. I want a furnished house. No house.
Let me ask you. She raised something. She raised something that we miss. Okay. In the first place, what is your degree? What if you come in and cannot prove that you are woman enough? Okay. What is your degree? Your degree.
I can prove I can do anything you want. Because we have equal rights, you should be willing to do the same for me.
I want to marry a virgin woman. Can you present that to me with your degree?
Lobola does not mean what it used to mean. In the olden days, yes, the girl had to be a virgin. She had to do something. But today, you're not a virgin. You can't declare to marry a virgin. If you're not a virgin, how do you want a virgin?
Something is quite late. Physically.
So the woman has to be a virgin here.
Well,
Boy, it looks like we're not going to be paying Lobola for a while then.
I think the important thing is that Lobola should not be tied down to the price for the woman. In other words, I have emphasized that the parents should actually come to an agreement just as a symbol, but not necessarily to put a price on the woman, because then you are actually violating the very principle that you're trying to support. And another very important thing that I must mention is that the Constitution, for instance, allows people in this country to practice their culture. In other words, although we have this principle of equality, which has been mentioned, the principle of equality which has been mentioned here, which I definitely support, but at the same time, whilst the law wants us to be equal, at the same time, it doesn't necessarily mean that we don't have the right to be different. We do have the right to be different. We do have the right to retain certain practices which we believe are good and noble. But of course, if there's something wrong with them, that has to be removed, has to be changed. But it is not something that we have to change by legislation and say, well, stop Lobola and so on, because effectively in practice, you will not actually succeed in doing that.
Let's hear this young man here.
Yeah, Felicia, I think my sister there is seeming to be a lost identity. We need to do something about you. I think.
No,
yes.
wait a minute.
Look.
I have to jut in here. Why is it that we have what I call intolerance? When people do not agree with you, you say they have lost their
Felicia, I'm becoming emotional because she's losing direction.
All right.
Okay, Felicia.
What I like is that
I feel Lobola should be there.
Yeah.
But it must not be like a text. We are being texted, and I think it must not be a text. A lot of people are making money out of it, but Lobola must be there. It is part and parcel of our culture.
Okay.
It will remain there.
All right.
That's it.
Let's hear.
Okay, thank you very much. Felicia, I would like to come back to Don's issue of 50-50. Times have changed, where a woman goes to work, a man goes to work. Coming back from work, we share the house costs. When it comes to Lobola, we'll have to go 50-50, including sharing surnames. I take his surname. Surnames.
Did you hear that, Mr. Mangezi?
What does she
it
say?
gets now to the point where we even have to take each other's surnames. So if he's Nkosi and she's Dlamini, we both become Nkosi Dlamini.
Surnames have been hyphenated for too long, Felicia.
No? Wait a minute. Someone says like Mabuza-Suttle. I need to explain. Mabuza-Suttle just means that I wanted to make sure I still remember I'm African, never forget it. That's why Mabuza never goes for me.
Surnames have been hyphenated. There's nothing wrong with that.
Let's go.
Surnames have been hyphenated for a long time. It's not a new thing.
That's
you can
true.
be Mabuza-Suttle. There's nothing wrong with that. We're not questioning that. What we're questioning here is that Lobola shouldn't go. That's all we're saying. The surname is not important.
But Mr. Mangezi, you are literally using the authoritarian method that we've known throughout the African culture. Just Lobola must stay. But you need to explain to us as women why.
We have checked, the survey has gone on to check as to whether must Lobola go or stay. And it has proved that Lobola, many people still think Lobola must stay on. So why must it go? Whom are we trying to please by saying Lobola must go?
Near the young person here.
Oh, I really think that Lobola must be abolished because, firstly and originally, Lobola was paid by men to sort of gain the rights of human sexuality, labor, and reproductive capacity. And now, as the time is changing, we women, we have rights equal. We have rights that are equal to those of men.
Okay.
And what are you saying by those? Because men will be paying unfairly because they won't be having rights anymore.
Well, it goes back to the exploitation. This is the whole issue of exploitation of women. And what was the Beijing conference all about if it did not talk about questioning certain traditions that we cannot forget? When we come back, I'd like to look at the future. What does the future hold in terms of customs that continue to either repress us or take us forward? Will Lobola be able to survive? A few things have come up during the break, and I'd like to touch on them. Another one here, Jacob Tladi says, the custom of killing old people and the custom of killing one of the twins were abolished because those customs did not enrich people. If you abolish one custom, abolish them all. Why not Lobola, he asks. Then I also hear here that, from these gentlemen behind here, that today's women cannot even cook. So why should they be paying Lobola for women who cannot cook? I don't know. I'm getting confused now. Treasure, quickly.
Yeah. I think what I want to make clear here, Felicia, is that we'll never see the value of Lobola if we're arguing about Lobola on a different platform. We have to be African, come back and put Lobola on a traditional platform, African traditional platform, so that when we argue about Lobola, we know the reasons why Lobola came to existence in the first place.
Will it survive?
If we look at it that way, it'll survive. But if we look at it with a township mentality, definitely we're going to kill it because we do not understand why it is
there. But now we're having interracial marriages. We are having people marrying into different cultures, and we're going to hit them with culture shock as they come into African tradition. Where does this thing all go? I would like you to just think about it as I'm trying to get some more comments from the young people here.
What I'd like to say, Felicia, is that the problem with our culture, it was that it was discussed by men. Men used to sit together and discuss and say, Indaba. This is what everybody's going to do, and this is how the law should be followed.
As we can see on the panel there, huh?
As you can see on the panel. Now, what's going on is that all these kids, like that young lady over there, they're going to multiracial schools. They're being taught about women emancipations and empowerment. So women are being empowered. So they're going to tell them that, listen here, Boyki, you're going to pay 40,000 rands, and you're going to buy me a Versace, you're going to buy me a BMW and a house. If they can afford it, Lobola then must stay.
We need to be honest here, my black brothers and sisters. Lobola, when it used to be paid in the olden days, women were expected to be subservient to save the males and their families.
Yeah,
you were actually told by the elders in your own family, cancelled before you go. You're going to join another family. Anything that they do to you, you must tolerate because they paid for you. It doesn't work today, my brothers. I'm actually not surprised to see some of the black brothers fighting for Lobola because you know why? Women today are economically active. We can do things for ourselves. Some of the women are breadwinners in their own family. The only thing that is still maintaining control over women by men is Lobola. It must go.
Looks like it continues. Boy, were you Lobola too? Let's hear.
You can't put a price on a human life, no matter what. So you're discriminating every single one. She said 40,000, a car, a house, a furnished house, a cellular phone or whatever. You work for that. You work together. That's what marriage is about. You work together to get your house, to get the bed you live in.
In your culture, what is a culture that you look up to greatly that you feel maybe stabilizes the marriage?
Is the marriage and the love that we have together and how we worked to get what we got. If I live in a shack, it's what I worked for to get into that shack. If I live in a mansion, it's how I worked to get into that mansion.
But wait, wasn't there times when Peter's wife would look at Peter and say, yeah, that looks like a great guy because he owns a Mercedes-Benz and he dresses well and he has a house in Sandton? Wasn't it? There is a materialistic value still to marriage. No? You guys started off with nothing, huh?
We started off with nothing. When we met, we had nothing. Everything we have today, we built together.
Obviously, it's a major African tradition, but that's the point you made just now. Nobody's picked up on it. Just say I want to marry Dawn tomorrow. How's Dawn going to explain to me to pay Lobola to her family when I'm not brought up that way? How are we going to explain to each other? Why don't we just leave cultures to determine their own futures? Why are we interfering? There's more Lobola in the white community than there is in the black community right now.
Explain that.
Well, let's talk about a typical Lebanese marriage. I would be called in.
Yeah, you mentioned that one. So in that sense.
And then the questions are asked. What are you worth? What are you going to give my daughter? What are you going to offer her? You have to prove it to the man. Otherwise, he's not going to be very happy. He'll accept it because he can see there's a lot of love and tradition and love and the family. He goes back into the tradition. That's the Mansa family. This is that family. There's enough Lobola all over the world. I don't think we're going to change it, and Lobola will stay in all traditions.
Okay. Will it survive?
It will.
Okay. Will it survive? A show of hands. Who wants Lobola to stay? Let's show hands. Let's show hands. Seriously, let's show hands. Who wants Lobola to go?
No need to count.
Who wants Lobola to go? Okay. They are the minority.
No vote.
They're the minority. Okay. Will Lobola survive? Mr. Bikicha?
Felicia, I want to be honest. Lobola is already on its way out. Point number one, the woman today is self-sufficient.
Yes.
And because we, the parents, meddle in the love affair, some women have had to subsidize their own Lobola.
To help the husband?
Just to please the parents, because they want their love to survive. That is
That's
one.
true. Bua. Let's hear.
Point two is that based on the old traditional customs, Lobola is to show your manhood, to show that you can take care of the woman. Which woman today is worth her soul that wants to be taken care of?
Yeah.
And then, in the same vein, wanting to be taken care of, and you demand gender equality, you demand your rights, but you want to be taken care of. Yes. Let us not be hypocritical. Lobola,
wait.
If a survey were to be taken today of most of the black marriages, Lobola, you'd get about 30% that were paid Lobola, others were subsidized. I'm telling you, Lobola is on his way out.
No.
It will never
Mr.
survive.
Magezi, is Lobola on its way out? Will it survive?
Lobola will survive, madam. Lobola is here to stay. I have seen families that are both working, husband and wife. Husband gets very little money, and the woman gets a lot of money. But the woman will still ask for money from the husband who gets very little. Lobola will still survive.
Which woman are you talking about?
Women in general. You're self-included. With your self-included. Show me your husband. I'll ask your husband.
Huh?
Show me your husband. Then I'll ask him.
Sorry?
What's your husband?
This is not I'm not married.
Thank you.
But I don't have
What's somebody else?
No. It's by choice that I don't marry. I'm not married, and I won't get married.
I'm not questioning that. All I'm saying is that show your husband. Then I'll question him.
I think, Felicia, the nature of the debate here actually is evidence of the fact that you cannot simply say Lobola is going to go tomorrow, because there are people who are still supporting it, both men and women. And I'm saying that if both men and a woman actually are in favor of Lobola, why do you want to deprive them of something that they are in favor of?
Why are you questioning it,
Felicia? Now, my question is, will it survive with a changing society?
It will.
It will adapt to the society. It may ultimately, of course, be be phased out in a particular form, but some form, as I think I agree with the couple there, that in one way or another, various societies do pay some form of Lobola. My viewpoint is that it is going to survive with some adaptations and changes. It may ultimately change beyond recognition, but some form of change will take place in this custom.
Well, it sounds quite interesting. Unfortunately, we have to close this. I have to do some other topic related to this. Maybe look at marriages in other cultures and see how they're compatible. But as they say, there has always been a dowry system somehow or other. In closing, I'd like to say, if you have 5 million for my daughter, we can talk. We close out with Nozipho Nguse singing Shanyelani Amabala. Let us sweep the yards. That's the Makoti song. After Lobola, by the way. Yay!